All right, so we are live. It sounds a bit strange, Rich, to say welcome to the podcast, considering it's kind of partly your podcast, but it's good to have you on, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's good to be on. We've been talking about this for quite a while, eh?
Yeah, quite a few months probably, really.
Mm.
So it's good to get the ball rolling and sort of dive into the podcast world with Healthpath.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. So I guess the intention of this is really to introduce you to our listeners and to share a little bit of your story. So I'm not sure where you feel might be the best place to start, but I guess kind of just diving back into your former life, ultimately, I guess, before Healthpath and how that progressed into the beginnings of Healthpath and Healthpath Pro.
Absolutely. Well, where do we start? It feels like such a long time ago. I guess where it starts is where many of our customers are right now, which is that you are living your normal life and you have a couple of symptoms that aren't a big part of your life. But as things evolve, those symptoms become a huge part of your day. And in some instances, they actually become a part of your identity. And so if we think about my situation and we go back 15 years ago for when it started, the first symptoms that started for me were back pain. And it wasn't a huge part of my life, but then it started to be. And, you know, you do what the normal person does, which is you start off with the doctor, which is where you should always start, of course. And at the time I was diagnosed with a slip disc. And not knowing what I know about medicine today, a slip disc was the identity and the symptom and the label that I'd been given. And so I carried on down that road. And unfortunately for me, it just became much worse. And before I knew it, I was living off painkillers and sleeping tablets to just get through the day. And I didn't realize that my lifestyle had any impact, but I think lifestyle is always a really important point to acknowledge. And so my lifestyle back then, before the world of Healthpath, was I was working in London, you know, a typical busy career where you're trying to be successful and working more hours than you should and really pushing yourself, perhaps burning the candle at both ends a little bit, as young people sometimes do, especially in London. And before I knew it, the symptoms that I was experiencing started to change quite significantly. And after, oh gosh, I guess it was 9 years of, in fact, it wasn't 9 years, excuse me, it was more like 5 years of just going to the doctors, trying to understand what options I had with the slip disc. Could I do surgery? At some point, I looked at stem cell research, you know, and it wasn't until a spine specialist said to me, you know, Richard, the truth is that sometimes people have slip discs and they don't even know about it. And sometimes people have a lot of pain and have slip discs. We don't really understand the correlation between pain and slip discs. And I guess that was my first clue, Alex, that there was something beyond mainstream medicine in terms of answers. And it wasn't until things got worse for me, coming back to the story, that I started to get chronic constipation and extreme fatigue and muscle weakness and brain fog and concentration issues. You know, I felt like the list was endless. That I finally got to a point where I was able to turn to nutrition and functional medicine. And that was obviously before we met. And I was very fortunate that my brother-in-law and sister already ran a successful nutrition business. But back then, to myself and the uneducated mind, the world of nutrition just felt like it was something about food. And the theory of root cause medicine hadn't ever, you know, entered my mind. And so I started going down the functional medicine route, and I was educated on the fact that all symptoms have a root cause, and that you can start to look in the biochemistry for clues for disbalances, and it's those disbalances that can help you to understand what's contributing to your symptoms. And so in my situation, I was I had inflammatory issues, and so what we were able to identify was yes, I did have slip discs, but the reason that I was in pain most of the day and night was because my body was having an inflammatory response, and the easiest way for that to manifest was through the kind of the weakest area of the body, which was the slip discs. And so a couple of tests, it was a gut test, helped me to identify that I had leaky gut, and that it was my response, my body's responses to foods that were actually creating the pain, not the slip discs. Of course, that sounds like it's linear and it's one causation to the other, and as you know more than anyone, and as you helped me to understand, actually, when we started working together, there are so many things that contribute towards the disbalances we have in our body. It's not the fact that I had leaky gut, that I had inflammatory issues. It's that I was leading a lifestyle, high stress, high alcohol, poor food intake with glutinous foods. It was a whole host of things that were actually contributing to the disbalances that I had. And so I guess maybe the next question is how did that manifest into Healthpath, right?
Mm.
And so if we think about it, looking at my journey, once I'd realized that my entire life circumstances over many years had compounded up to create disbalances in my body. There was also SIBO, which was contributing towards really chronic constipation, and probably the brain fog and a few other things. Once I realized that and I had this awakening, actually it was then 2 to 3 years before I was able to rebalance, let's call it. And I was really grateful to come across you, Alex, because it was our final years together. Obviously, we didn't start off together; that was with a different practitioner. But it was our final years together that gave me so much education and enough ability to get back on track. So I just want to take a moment, bro, to say thank you so much for that. So much gratitude for everything I've learned off you over the years.
No, it's been a privilege. And I guess actually our relationship is a good example of the value of fundamentally getting on in sort of a client practitioner relationship, because we know how important it is. There is even research indicating that the most important thing within the healing journey isn't the medication that you're taking from a conventional medicine perspective. It is therefore not going to be the supplement that you're taking from a complementary perspective, but it is that therapeutic relationship that becomes the most important part of it. And I think I remember the first time that we jumped on, I think, a Skype call and kind of connected, and we just had some, I guess, similar ways of thinking. We both had similar interests. So there were those kind of conversations that we naturally had that allowed us to go outside, I guess, the normal conversation of traditional functional medicine. So yes, we spoke about how to deal with your SIBO and some of the other imbalances that were detected, but it allowed us to have conversations more around the spiritual side of well-being, and the importance of values within navigating life and things like this. And I think that's worth sort of emphasizing as well, ultimately.
You're right. And it's a really poignant topic at the moment, for Healthpath and for Healthpath Pro. It's something that we're trying to really consider, how that vital element really of that relationship building can be brought into the vision of Healthpath, which is about making things easier from a technology perspective for the modern day consumer. So yeah, I guess we should probably talk about that a little bit today. So let's give everyone just a bit of a understanding about why Healthpath started. And so going back to my story, it was really coming to the end of, well, it's never the end, is it? It's a lifelong investment in health, but coming to a place of rebalance in my journey when I was able to look back with the wonderful benefit of hindsight. And, I was just able to really grasp that if you look at the stats, because I'm a numbers man, and you look at the word chronic disease, which covers everything from IBS to cancer, it's just so very clear that chronic disease is one of the biggest epidemics of all time for our species, and that it's growing rapidly, and modern day life is contributing to that, and mainstream medicine is so very important for so many things. But when it comes to a chronic disease, the solution that it's providing is not going to stop it, because it fundamentally looks at symptoms, not at what's driving the symptoms. And so I felt clear, and a lot of people that go on this health journey that you've been on as well, Alex, and our customers and so many of the practitioners that migrate their careers to nutrition, it just feels so revolutionary as a concept of all symptoms have a root cause, that you want to spread the message and you want to tell the world. And to me, functional medicine and nutrition, it feels like a really credible solution to chronic problems, especially because in recent years, it's trying to bring credibility to what has previously been quite intangible data. You know, the concept of stress having a direct link to disease is something that sounds like it's common sense, but there hasn't been much data for it in the past. If you look at the, over the number of decades. And so certain aspects of the theories of functional medicine root cause philosophy haven't been credible. And what I like about the industry is it's bringing about more robustness so that it can take a step into the mainstream stage as a complement to mainstream medicine, as a partnership to mainstream medicine at some point. However, if we think about my journey, it was long, it was painful, and I felt then and that it wasn't really a credible solution for a mass market problem. And what I mean when I say that is that, if you break down the two people involved, you've got the practitioners and the customers. From the customer's perspective, without the aid of technology, you can become quite reliant on your practitioner, on that relationship, for every ounce of support, for every ounce of education. And often what I experience and what a lot of our customers experience is quite a sense of loneliness, because not many people, especially if you haven't been given a diagnosis and you're just living with symptoms, not many people can really give you empathy for what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. And so from a consumer's perspective, applying all of those changes into your lifestyle, bringing about food changes, bringing about lifestyle changes, taking so many supplements that you just got bucketfuls of them, that's quite a big load to put onto what is likely already a stressful, busy, time-short life. And so the essence of Healthpath is going, okay, we think functional medicine is credible, but what can we do to make the journey of education, of support, of testing easier, with less friction, with less costs as well, and more accessible, and the same applies for practitioners, the unsung heroes in so many ways, because practitioners are a cost for a consult. But what customers don't see is that behind the consult, behind that 1 hour paid time, there's 4 or 5 hours of admin work, of research work, of report writing work, and everything else that goes into those little questions, those one-to-one questions that come regularly that customers need when they're in a state of feeling support. And so that's why together and with the rest of the team, we've worked on Healthpath Pro, because as you said so poignantly, in our situation, it was that one-to-one relationship that was quite fundamental to the emotional, mental side of coaching me about how to look at my health situation rather than being absorbed in my symptoms. And so I don't think that we can ever replace practitioners, but what we want to do is we want to make this entire model more scalable. We want customers to have better access to technology, to the understanding of what test results mean, to knowing what to do with test results, to having health plans. And when relevant, when the situation is extreme enough that that one-to-one support becomes more important than anything else, then we want to make sure that practitioners are enabled to do what they do best without burning themselves out for those extra 4 or 5 hours behind the scenes with all of the extra support that gets unpaid for. And that's why in the industry, we're seeing a lot of practitioners that are just overwhelmed, especially in a time when there are more and more people that need extra support. So yeah, did I cover it all? I think I'm trying to, what was I talking? Yeah, trying to give us a feel for what Healthpath is really, I guess, and what the vision is. Yeah.
No, I think you've answered that very well. I mean, ultimately, your experiences have I think they shone the light on challenges within the industry from a client perspective, but also from a practitioner perspective. And I guess you have also the benefit of having family members and close ones who are practitioners. So you see a little bit behind the scenes as well of what goes on.
Yeah.
And it is challenging. And I think you've done an amazing job of obviously bringing Healthpath into existence and almost Healthpath Pro into existence. And I think it's a combination of both is very game changing for both the client or the customer, so to speak, and for practitioners, because if we are able to streamline that process for both, then you're essentially able to help more people as a practitioner, and more people can have access to some of the functional testing that is out there that isn't, for whatever reason, I guess, yet credited from a conventional perspective. We often get clients commenting that their conventional healthcare practitioner might not be too familiar with certain conditions, whether it's SIBO or leaky gut or a certain marker within comprehensive stool testing. So there is a barrier, I think, from a mass perspective when we're on this topic. And we're, I guess, trying to break some of those barriers for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, by the way, for the compliment, but I would definitely won't take all the glory. It's a beautiful team effort from a bunch of amazing people that have become a family, and you included. And so it's a collective effort. And, back in 2017, end of 2017, I think it was, where Sarah and I thought, right, we want to be part of this mission to do something good. We think there's an opportunity. Obviously, Sarah worked in the hospital back then, 15 years as a pharmacist, and then obviously we talked to you, Alex, and that was, I think it was in 2018, and we started getting the team together. We really didn't know if we'd have enough money to even launch the product, let alone survive as a business. And so it's been a constant David and Goliath situation where we just feel like there's so much we could do. There's so much product we could build. There's so much we could improve for customers on this journey. And we're just so blessed to have such a wonderful team of people that are part of this vision and willing to take decisions in their lives to make it possible. And it's what I think is really rare about Healthpath is that the very vast majority of us, apart from our development team, have all had personal journeys, in marketing, in content, in customer services. Most people are practitioners already that had a previous career in a different world and went through their own journey and inspired them to change careers and be part of a different type of future. And so I think it's just so very fortunate that we've got the team that we do. And it's I guess another moment of gratitude, because we wouldn't do it without everyone that's involved. And I'm just proud that we've managed to have an impact on so many thousands of people's lives. We've given them access to tests that are not normally available on direct purchases on many websites, because the practitioner is used to being so involved in the interpretation of the results and the recommendation of the test. And so we're pleased that we're saving so much money for practitioners. And with Healthpath Pro, I'm so excited just to see how we can really revolutionize what the practitioners are doing on a day-to-day basis. And coming to your point about credibility of these tests is a great point. It's a pioneering area of science. There are a lot of people in the alternative market that have experience with them that are black and white convinced of their use cases because they see the correlation between symptoms and biomarkers in tests. I think Healthpath are the first to admit that there's a lot more science and research and verifying that needs to be done. It's a new area of science, and there's more we don't know than we do know. And I hope one day Healthpath can be part of a research opportunity where we can help to further the understanding and the credibility of these tests, which seem to be having such a great impact on so many people.
No, absolutely. I think that is one of the things that certainly really excites me, this idea that we've got an awful lot of information and we've supported thousands of people. And it's a matter of how can we use that experience to support the research, as you say, ultimately. But Rich, you've mentioned Healthpath Pro a few times. Do you want to just do like a super quick intro into what it is, who it's for, and I guess maybe even, if possible, some of the features, just in case people aren't familiar with it yet?
I get into the habit of doing that, don't I? Yes, yes, we should. So HealthPath Pro is a platform built purely for practitioners, and it's in the recognition that practitioners are essential to the part of the healing journey for people that are above a certain tier of illness or of symptoms impacting their life. You can't automate everything. And so we wanted to take a step back in the same way that we looked at the customer journey and looked at everything from buying a test to getting recommendations to support plans to education. And we broke it down and tried to make it easier. You know, that's what one of HealthPath's mottos: we make health change easy, because traditionally it's been quite hard. We're now looking at the practitioner journey and going, okay, well, what does a practitioner need to do in their day-to-day running? You know, from the clinical practice development of education to the writing of reports, which takes a lot of time for customers, to the onboarding and questionnaires of symptoms, to recommending tests and supplements, and to anything else that falls into the kind of the gambit of the day-to-day. So HealthPath Pro is a mix between a marketplace of tests and supplements, a practice management system to communicate, message, and manage your clients. And it's also got a few other cool things like the auto interpretation of test results. So rather than getting back complicated markers from labs, which don't necessarily mean too much to all practitioners, because some practitioners are earlier in their development stages, it uses algorithms to go, okay, we've got the lab's test results. Let's now bring some interpretation into it to aid both your customers and your understanding of the test, to make it much easier to go through that process and to save the practitioner time. So it's something that's still under wraps, I guess, and we're close to finishing it. It should come out, well, I probably shouldn't put a date on it. So it will be out this year, hopefully sooner in the coming months. But yeah, we're very excited about it because we think that it will definitely hit the nail on the head for a lot of pain points that practitioners are experiencing. And ultimately, it's going to help us and help everyone to help more people, which is what HealthPath is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be brilliant. I mean, I look back at and think to have something like that would be incredible, just to sort of streamline that process, and to use technology for all it's worth, ultimately.
Absolutely. Let me turn the question around on you now, if I may.
Oh,
so what I didn't mention about HealthPath Pro is the educational supportive content that is so important for the customer's journey, that in the past has been only reliant on the practitioner. You're a big brain, Mr. Manos, in the world of nutrition and functional medicine, and so it's yourself that's going to be writing and has written and created a lot of that content already. So maybe you could tell everyone a little bit more about it and where you think it could go.
Oh, you've put me on the spot, Rich. So I guess the best way to think about it and introduce it is we're looking to create content on, to begin with, all of the key symptoms, conditions, biomarkers that we see frequently in clinical practice, either as really a practitioner or a customer. And we appreciate people learn and absorb information in different ways. So there will be written handouts that can be downloaded. There will be webinar style presentations. There will be recorded Q&As. There will be really a wealth of information in all sorts of different formats for people to access. Because I do think that, especially when taking this sort of functional medicine approach to healing, education for me is the most important part of it. Both obviously for the practitioner, we're kind of in ongoing education throughout our entire career, but there are certain little bits of context that are so key for clients to understand because otherwise, it can be very confusing, and that becomes distressing in its own right. And we can also, I think, become very hypervigilant around our symptoms. We can become hypervigilant around our food if we don't fully understand context of health and dis-ease. And you could use, I guess, various examples here. And I guess one that comes to mind, and it's because we spoke about it in the Q&A session last night with some of our customers, is the role of like mycotoxins, for example, and food, and the role that food plays within healing if we have mold illness, or for that matter, certain elements of even gut health. So the example I gave was actually coffee. So anyone in the biohacking space, anyone who maybe has been diagnosed with mold illness, they've lived in a water damaged property, and they have maybe done a mycotoxin test, for those that are familiar with that test. And maybe they've been recommended to follow a specific diet, or they've been told they need to avoid certain foods as part of the healing process. Now, this is a debated area, I admit, but using coffee as a very specific example, we know that the innate chemistry of coffee seems to be protective against mycotoxins. So just to take a step back for a second, we know that coffee is one of the most common beverages or foods where mycotoxins are found. And mycotoxins are just these toxins produced by various species of molds. And because of, I guess, our food supply system and the fact that coffee beans and certain grains like rice can be stored in big warehouses that potentially get damp, etc., molds can grow and these mycotoxins can be produced, put simply. But we know that various phytochemicals in coffee seem to actually metabolize these mycotoxins. It's like Mother Nature has helped us out ultimately. And the reason I kind of bring this up based on your question, Rich, is because it was a question we had last night, this idea that food may not have been the underlying cause of this individual's symptoms. It was a trigger for the symptoms. So this individual, we felt, had an underlying chronic imbalance, and food obviously exacerbated the symptoms that she was experiencing. And her question was, is that applicable to sort of mold and mycotoxins as well? And you will get certain functional medicine doctors. Dr. Jill Carnahan is a good example. She is of the strong belief that a low mold diet is really important as part of the healing process. And I'm not saying that sometimes it isn't, but it's that context, it's that nuance whereby we can say, well, actually, food may not be as important as some people think, dependent on obviously all the different variables involved. And that education becomes really important, because for this customer last night, there was almost a sense of relief. You could almost sort of sense the shoulders dropping from the earlobes and the tension dropping from the jaw as she understood that, okay, I don't need to think about diet as the primary way that I'm going to get better. There's obviously the basic things that we all want to be doing more of the time. But apart from that, we just need to appreciate, like you did in your journey, Rich, that stress is just a deal breaker. And we have created, I think, a society where sometimes we can be overemphasizing the role that nutrition can play within some of these conditions and within some of the time. And it's just very important, I think, that we will take that step back and appreciate what else could be going on in our life, in our lifestyle, in our emotional and mental state, which could be driving some of the imbalances that are contributing to the symptoms that we're experiencing. And we do have some really great research on this now. Martin in the Q&A last night mentioned the studies showing that if you take a group of people with IBS, for example, and you divide that group into two, one group is given the low FODMAP diet, which we know can be helpful from a symptom relief perspective for IBS, but you give the other group a mindfulness-based stress reduction program that includes some yoga and maybe some meditation. They both have similar improvements to their symptoms. So that shows us that at least for a subset of people who do have diagnosed IBS, nutrition isn't the underlying issue that is going to support them. There needs to be a more holistic lifestyle approach as well. And this takes us back to the gut-brain axis for those people who like the science. How well is the brain communicating with the gut and the gut communicating with the brain? And various mindfulness, stress management-based techniques we think can be of benefit in those sorts of situations. So for me, the educational side of the piece is both about educating people on the functional medicine side of things, on the nutritional medicine side of things, but also on the lifestyle side of things and the spiritual side of things. Again, there's plenty of research showing us that our spiritual well-being, which really means that we are in alignment with our values, we are living out our values, that we have a sense of purpose in life and that we have a sense of meaning to life. We know these things have an impact on our physical well-being. So it's just so important that we, I think, spread that message within the education that we deliver as well. So that was a very long answer to your question, Rich.
As always, super powerful. And I'm really looking forward to this next phase of content that we're going to create, which is another step to empowering a one-to-many model, empowering people to self-educate, empowering practitioners to have all of the resources that they need to at their hands to educate their customers. But I just want to take a moment to kind of really to validate what you're saying from my personal experience, because if we think about the functional medicine theory, it's your biochemistry has your clues for your disbalances, and it's your lifestyle that impacts your disbalances. And your lifestyle can be your sleep, it can be your emotional side of things, it can be your food, it can be the air that you're breathing. And I think in this, when you're trying to take a scientific approach and you identify with, I've got leaky gut, I've got a parasite, I've got SIBO. I personally fell quite hard into a somewhat obsessive state over food and over this kind of formulaic nutritional approach of starving the bad bacteria and feeding the good bacteria. And I remember, and I have to apologize, how many times I reached out to you, Alex. Oh, I ate this food last night. Was it this that made me constipated today? And it's quite a, it's a really difficult state to be in. And from speaking personally to our customers and speaking to the customer service team, I know that a lot of our customers have those same emotions of feeling like they're on a tightrope when it comes to food, and this kind of almost obsessive state of what food triggered at this time. And it took you quite a while, and you were so patient in doing it, in kind of coaching me into the mindset of understanding that it's about good decisions, micro decisions over a long period of time that compound up to good health, in the same way that it's misinformed decisions around lifestyle, potentially not for everyone, over a long period of time that has contributed to health status. And my new understanding, especially because I've been through a few things recently with heartburn, which was stress induced, my new understanding is that I've massively and radically altered in my mind the priority level of lifestyle beyond nutrition and beyond biochemistry. And in fact, when I say lifestyle, actually what I'm really meaning is your mental attitude towards yourself and towards the world. If your mindset is constantly in a state of anxiety over your health because you're attached to symptoms every day and you're absorbed in it, and then you're given a restrictive diet, and that opens up a new area of maybe obsession over cutting out foods, I think in hindsight that caused more stress and it probably lengthened the journey. And so I really just welcome what you're saying as an important educational step for everyone to understand that, okay, yes, we can do some of the most advanced stool tests on your gut in the world possible. We can give you an amazing analysis of your stool results. We can assess your symptoms and we can give you a health plan. And in the health plan, there is lifestyle tips, but perhaps don't forget those lifestyle tips, because it is the mindset approach of looking at how happy you are or unhappy you are in certain areas of your life that really could be contributing unconsciously to your symptoms. I remember, actually, if I'm honest, that I was very unhappy in my previous career. I was lost in this world of ambition and trying to strive. in the same role for 15 years with high stress, relative seniority. And it wasn't until I started Healthpath and changed my environment that the final jigsaw puzzle moved into place. And I guess that was my first clue about, well, actually, I haven't changed anything in my diet, and I haven't changed anything in my supplements. And the only really real thing that changed was moving work. And I wasn't in a particularly high place of stress when I left, because it wasn't particularly busy times, but it was just that new sense of purpose, perhaps, that really made, just, I don't know, awakened the feeling of huge health inside me and strength. And I felt like I'd finally got over that finishing line that we always seem to be striving for health.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think this next phase of really encouraging everyone to look at the beyond the physical stuff and the emotional type of things is really exciting, because we could see a lot of great results with it.
Yeah. And I'll kind of, I guess, can summarize and conclude this whole concept with the idea that I'm sure I've heard or read this somewhere before, this idea that health is about abundance and about expansion. Ultimately, I think, we can all get an intuitive sense of this idea that health is not some sort of restriction and deprivation. And while we need a little bit of that at times during the healing process, there has to be an intention that somewhere in our lives we are expanding, we are growing, and we have an abundance. And I think, just sort of from let's say an energetic perspective, it seems to make sense. If you're kind of restricting, I have spoken to people where it's taken them a while to realize that that's actually impacted everything. Even their social circles have now restricted down, and maybe they have a handful of people that they socialize with. And I think it's one of those slippery slopes where we can go down the wrong rabbit hole. And you've been there, Rich. I've been there through my health journey to some degree as well. But I encourage everyone to think about this idea of expansion and abundance if we're really trying to get vibrantly healthy, which we all can have, which we can all deserve. And it requires making sure that we're working in the correct areas ultimately.
Yeah, I guess patience.
Definitely.
Yeah, a big lesson. Once you've got the information, the test results give you a really good indication of where you should target the disbalances. The supplements can work on targeting, the disbalances identified. And then once you've got that nailed, and once you understand there are certain areas of your life that perhaps are unbalanced, then it's just about rolling it out, patience, giving yourself time, not being too hard on yourself. Yeah. Like the concept of abundance. I have to give that one a try as well.
Brilliant. All right, Rich, is there anything that we haven't yet mentioned that you think it would be helpful or important just to touch on?
I think there's a lot more that we could talk about between you and I, Alex. We've got so much hindsight from the journeys that we've been on. We want to take the opportunity to thank our customers for being part of the journey with us, being part of the community. We're coming out with some really amazing features for you in a not too distant future that will give you access to peer-to-peer support in the community forum. It will give you access to thousands and thousands of words of educational content that we've been creating for you. So watch this space. As always, guys, we're open for feedback and questions. If there's a feature that you think would radically change your health journey, tell us about it. We'd love to speak to you. But yeah, and thank you so much, Alex, for hosting me, first of many podcasts, and for all of the wisdom that you bring to Healthpath. And we're just really grateful that you decided to be part of the journey back in the day, which feels like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah, no, it feels like a long time ago. But thank you for the offer. I think it's been exciting, it's been fun, and I think the best is obviously yet to come ultimately. Brilliant. Thank you, Rich. It's we'll have to do this again and kind of maybe dive a little bit more into your journey and some of the lessons that we've learned, just to kind of share that experience, because I think it's super powerful when people maybe are at the beginning or they're a little bit lost in the middle of their journey. Just hearing from people who have gone through it, I think, is healing in its own right.
That would be a pleasure. Maybe we should do that with some customers as well.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we can make it
Definitely.
right now. If there are any customers that are towards the end of that journey that want to jump on your podcast and talk about their hindsights to help other customers, yeah,
Yeah,
I'd love to
that's
do
a
that as well.
lovely idea.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Rich.
All right, thanks,
It's a
Alex. I'll catch
pleasure.
you in a bit. Take care.